नमस्ते. सुरू करा. धन्यवाद. धन्यवाद कला मॅडम. आपण सुरू करा.
Purushartha, fourfold goal of human life. The concept of Purushartha deals with multifarious aspects of human life, defines its goals, and makes for an integrated personality. Dharma, that is righteousness; Artha, that is wealth and material prosperity; Kama, that is sensual pleasure; and Moksha, that is liberation, are collectively known as Purushartha. Among these, Dharma, Artha and Kama taken together are called Trivarga, group of three. Purusharthas are at the root of interest and passion of human beings. Therefore, they direct human being to performance of actions, good or evil. Dharma is an instrument for the fulfillment of moksha, and Artha is an instrument for the fulfillment of both dharma as well as kama. The Purusharthas are to be practiced to make the suffering tolerable in human life. Dharma. There are alternative or complementary conceptions about dharma in Indian tradition. The term dharma is derived from the root dhru, which means to hold. Dharma is so called because it holds the living beings together for maintaining peace and order in society. The Mahabharata says Dharma is so called on account of its capacity for the sustenance of the world. Dharana dharma ityahuhu dharmo dharayate prajaha. That which is adhered to by human beings for coherent survival is known as dharma. The principles that regulate the life of human beings are also regarded as dharma. The Hindu Dharma prescribes a code of conduct for human beings in different stations of their life in relation with their varna. On account of dharma, people sustain in the hardships of life. The cosmic order, Ruta, through which all actions of human beings are supported, is also termed as dharma. The Rigveda equates sacrifice, that is yajna, with dharma. It says, the gods performed sacrifice through sacrifice, and that sacrifice became the first among dharmas. Yajnena yajnem ajanta devaha tani dharmani prathamanyasan. A sacrifice symbolizes renouncing personal possessions for offering to a deity as well as for the sake of charity towards the members of society. The Taittiriya Aranyaka proclaims, Dharma is the foundation of the whole universe. In this world, people go unto a person who is best versed in Dharma for guidance. By means of Dharma, one drives away evil. Upon Dharma, everything is founded. Therefore, Dharma is the highest good. Dharma implies good not only, but it implies good, but not only in this world and not only in the other world. Here also, in this very world, more importantly, it implies good. Kanada, the founder of the Vaisheshika school of Indian philosophy, defines dharma as that which brings prosperity here and liberation hereafter. Yato abhyudayanishreya siddhis sadharmaha. While Jaimini, the author of the Mimamsa aphorism, says, ordaining of right action is dharma, chodana lakshanortho dharmaha, dharmaha chodana apara paryaya vidhi pramanakaha, and also chodaneti kriyayaha pravartakam vachanam. Dharma has been declared for the sake of promotion of strength and efficacy among beings, says the Mahabharata. प्रभवार्थाय भूतानां धर्म प्रवचनं कृतं यस्यात् प्रभव संयुक्तः स धर्म इति निश्चयः. The Mahabharata mentions non-violence as the supreme dharma. The Manusmriti says, Dharma, when violated, verily destroys. Dharma, when preserved, preserves. Therefore, Dharma should not be violated for fear that the violated Dharma will destroy us. धर्म एव हतो हन्ति धर्मो रक्षति रक्षितः तस्मात् धर्मो न हन्तव्यो मानो धर्मो हतो वधीत्. In the Nyaya school, dharma is an attribute of substance and is practiced as a means to attain heaven. The yoga school maintains that non-injury, truthfulness, non-stealing, control of the senses, and non-accumulation of more than what is necessary for life make for dharma, though the term dharma does not appear in this particular yoga sutra itself. These universal values can surely be counted as dharma. The sutra runs as follows: Ahimsa Satya Asteya Brahmacharya Aparigraha Yamaha. Manu mentions courage, forgiveness, self-control, non-stealing, purity, control of sense organs, wisdom, spiritual knowledge, truthfulness, and control of anger as the constituents of dharma. धृति क्षमा दमोस्तेयम शौचम इंद्रिय निग्रह धीर विद्या सत्यम अक्रोधो दशकम धर्म लक्षणम. As mentioned earlier, Mimamsa deals with the Karma Kanda, the active injunctions of the Vedas, which for them are identified with Dharma. The Uttara Mimamsa or the Vedanta, on the other hand, includes all noble qualities which have a certain universality in the concept of Dharma. The Yajnavalkya Smriti says the four Vedas, together with Puranas, logic, the science of Vedic interpretation, the sacred law, and the 6 limbs of the Veda constitute the 14 seats of Dharma. Purana, Nyaya, Mimamsa, Dharma Shastranga Mishritaha, Vedaha, Sthanani Vidyanam, Dharmasya cha Chaturdasha. The Manusmriti endorses this statement in the following verse: the entire Veda is the source of Dharma. Next comes the tradition and the virtuous conduct of those who are conversant to the Veda, also the customs of holy men and self-satisfaction. These are the roots of Dharma. Vedo khilo dharma moolam smriti shile cha tadvitam acharascheva sadhunam atmanah tushtirevacha. Charity is the utmost important feature of Dharma according to the Yajnavalkya Smriti. It proclaims that gift of wealth to a worthy person is a characteristic of Dharma. It has to be given with devotion. Desha kala upayena dravyam shraddha samanvitam patre pradiyate yat tat sakalam dharma lakshanam. These various connotations of Dharma are further confirmed and augmented by epics and Puranas which connect it to day-to-day life. In the Purana, Dharma finds its expression in 2 great sects of Hinduism, namely Vaishnavism and Savism. It speaks of the glory of these deities which belong to those particular sects, myths and legends associated with them, and opens the doors of Dharma to one and all, irrespective of caste and gender. The Mahabharata highlights the flexibility in the interpretation and freedom of choice in the practice of Dharma when it says, some people praise sacrificial rites and some eulogize the withdrawal from the worldly activities. There are some who praise charity alone, and there are those few who extol receiving the gifts. Some aspirants renounce everything and engage themselves in the practice of silence and meditation. The Kshatriyas extol sovereignty and protecting subjects as dharma. And there are seers who reflect on the self in solitude. So, the learned and the wise give their own verdict and declare that not to be aggressive to others is worth is worthy of esteem of the righteous. So only last sentence I will quote in Sanskrit. Etat sarvam samalokya बुधानाम एष निश्चयः अद्रोहेणैव भूतानाम यो धर्मः स सतां मतः. The action which causes elevation of a person, that is punya, is conceived as dharma, whereas that which causes fall of a person is called adharma. We call it as papa. Admonitions about dharma and adharma, good and evil, have been transmitted to human beings through scriptures. The revealed scriptures and the law books, the way of living of the wise, the voice of the inner soul, and the truthful motive of the pure mind. All these are the fundamental determinants of dharma. So it has been said, Shruti Smruti Sadacharaha Swasya cha Priyamatmanaha Samyak Sankalpajaha Kamo Dharma Moolam Idam Smrutam. The Manusmriti says, the way which has been followed and enlivened with perfect purity of heart by the wise and the learned, who are well versed in the Vedas and whose conduct follows the norms of Dharma, who are devoid of attachment and aversion. The way followed by them is Dharma. When enacted upon it, man attains the highest good. Vidvadbhi sevitaha sadbhi nityam advesharagibhi hridayena abhyanudnyato yo dharma tam nibodhat. It further says that which is in accordance with the norms of four determinants, namely the Vedas, the Smritis, and the right conduct of good people, is known as dharma. Vedah Smriti Sadachara Swasya cha Priyamatmanaha Etat Chaturvidham Prahu Sakshat Dharmasya Lakshanam. The words, that which is agreeable to heart, widens the gamut of the concept of dharma, as this expression confers on man freedom to choose his dharmic way of life. Dharma has the intrinsic, extrinsic, and the ultimate ends. When man succeeds in gaining peace, happiness, and strength in his own self, as his thoughts, speech, and actions are governed by the rules of dharma, then the intrinsic end is fulfilled. When man, inspired by the principles of dharma, dedicates himself wholeheartedly to the betterment of the society and the community at large, then the extrinsic end is fulfilled. Finally, when man recognizes the entire creation as the manifestation of the Absolute and his unity with it, then the ultimate end of dharma is achieved. Dharma has two dimensions, namely the universal Samanya and the particular Vishesha, both relating to the different facets of human life. The actions, the attributes, and the behavioral patterns that elevate a human being constitute the universal dharma, which is applicable to everyone at all times and all places. For example, the Mahabharata says, a man who knows what is unpleasant to him must not do unto others what he would not have done unto himself. Shruyatam dharma sarvasvam Shrutva chaiva avadharyatam atmana pratikulani paresham na samacharit. This universal aspect of dharma is also found in the scriptures of other prominent world religions. For example, the New Testament states, so always treat others as you would like them to treat you. This is the law and the prophets. Thus, action of man can be judged as good or evil depending on its consequence exercised on the other person. Blessed is he who knows what he does. The universal dharma deals with right conduct, which includes the cardinal virtues such as non-injury, kindness, contentment, forgiveness, self-restraint, non-stealing, purity, control of the senses, discrimination between right and wrong, truthfulness, pursuit of spiritual knowledge, and absence of anger, hatred, and malice. The Kautilya's Arthashastra includes non-injury. I should have said Kautilya Arthashastra because the for and if I am saying Kautilya's, it may be grammatically wrong. So I should utter the name of the treatise itself. The Kautilya Arthashastra includes non-injury, truthfulness, purity, absence of hatred, kindness, and forgiveness in the universal dharma. Sarvesham ahimsa, satyam, shaucham, anasuya, anrushamsam, it says. Devala, the author of one of the law books, includes austerity, that is tapas, in the category of the universal dharma. He defines it as follows. Tapas consists in emaciating the body by the practice of religious austerities and taking other vows of abstinence enjoined by the scriptures. According to Brihaspati Smriti, the virtues of compassion, daya, forgiveness, kshama, come within the ambit of the universal dharma. The Mahabharata also says that all the instructions of dharma are aimed at securing freedom from violence for all living beings. Therefore, that which contains the practice of non-violence is dharma. अहिंसार्थाय भूतानां धर्म प्रवचनं कृतं यस्याद् अहिंसा संयुक्तः स धर्म इति निश्चयः. The Padma Purana defines truthfulness, satya, as a statement of actual facts which is agreeable to all. The contrary of it is untruth. This definition is similar to what has been said in the Taittiriya Aranyaka and its commentary, Satyam Vacha Yathartham Bhashanam. Purity, Shaucha, has been defined on the internal and external levels. Of these, external purity consists of cleaning oneself with clay, water, and consuming pure food, while internal purity consists of the removal of impurities from the mind. In addition to this popular connotation of purity, it also includes abstinence from forbidden food. It prescribes association with men who are free from reproach and are engaged in the performance of their own duty. Dharma also includes the commands of prohibitory conduct. For example, it has been said that anger destroys attainments achieved through great effort. It deprives one from a higher state of life. क्रोधो हि धर्मम हरति यतीनां दुःख संचितम ततो धर्मविहीनानां गतिरिष्टा न विद्यते. Dharma regulates the illicit demands of sensual desire. Though the core of any religious faith, which is known as universal dharma, is common to all, beliefs and dogmas, rites and rituals, forms of prayer, worship and meditation vary from religion to religion. Vishesha, that is particular dharma, consists of the adherence to scriptural duty and to specific duties assigned to each caste and station of life. It is in this sense that the word Swadharma, one's own duty, is used in the Bhagavad Gita when Lord Krishna says it is better to die in Swadharma, that is one's own dharma, than to adopt another's. Shreyan Swadharmo Vigunaha Paradharmat Swanushthita Swadharme Nidhanam Shreyaha Paradharmo Bhayavaha. Now we come to Artha, that is wealth and material prosperity. Artha is defined as the acquisition of arts, land, gold, cattle, wealth, equipments, and friends. Remember, it is also attainment of friends. To get more and more friends, it is also covered under Artha. It is further, it has been said, the protection of what is acquired and the increase of what is protected. Vidya, Bhumi, Hiranya, Pashu, Dhanya, Bhandopaskara, Mitradinam, Arjanam. arjitasya vivardhanam arthaha. Friends, you will be surprised to know that this all comprehensive definition of Artha occurs in the Kama Sutra. In the system of Purushartha, wealth and sensual life follow Dharma. Earning livelihood and enjoyment of sensual pleasures have to be based on the righteousness and piety. In the Mahabharata, it has been proclaimed wealth and enjoyment have their origin in Dharma. Why should one not therefore take recourse to Dharma? ऊर्ध्व बाहुः विरोम्यैष न च कश्चित् शृणोति मे धर्मादर्थस्य कामस्य स किमर्थं न सेव्यते. Attainment of wealth is reckless without a strong foundation of dharma, that is righteousness or piety. Hence, the Manusmriti says, Parityajet arthakamo yau syatam dharmavarjito dharmam cha api asukhodarkam loka sankrishtam evacha. In the opinion of Kautilya, wealth is the supreme purushartha as dharma and kama depend on prosperity. Artha eva pradhana iti Kautilya. Artha mulau hi dharma kamo. Dharma in the sense of rituals partially depends on wealth, and in the sense of charity it entirely depends on it. Respect for wealth, its acquisition and preservation is the focus of treatises on polity. Along with the attainment of prosperity, the ideal of tyaga, that is sacrifice, is held high in the Indian tradition. The Atharva Veda says, earn by 100 hands and distribute with 1,000 hands. Shatahasta samahara sahasrahasta sankhya. The available texts on polity, such as Kautilya's Arthashastra, speak about earning, maintaining, and augmenting wealth. Material prosperity is treated with a practical outlook and openness. The reason is that all accumulation ends in destruction, rise ends in fall, union ends in separation, and life ends in death. Sarve kshayanta nichayah patanantah samuchayah sanyoga viprayoganta maranantam hi jivitam. The attainment of wealth is a necessity of life. It does not cause bondage, as has been pointed out in the Mahabharata. Neither is bondage in wealth, nor is freedom due to non-possession of wealth. Whether it is one or the other depends on one's frame of mind regarding possession or non-possession. Akinchannena mokshosti, kinchenne nasti bandhanam, kinchenne chetare chaiva, jantu jnanena muchyate. The Mahabharata states all good things flow from money. The Kama Sutra tells us the ways and methods of acquisition of wealth. It says that one should learn how to earn money by observing the conduct of the rich persons or by the acquaintance with those who know polity, or one should learn it from merchants. Tam adyaksha pracharat varta samayavidbhyah vanigbhyascha iti. We also come across the contradictory views about the attainment of wealth. On the one hand, it is proclaimed that dharma and moksha are dependent on Artha. On the other hand, it is said acquisition of money is considered to be the main source eventually of all disorder and violence, personal and collective. The ways of making money produce obsession about it and generate miserliness, arrogance, pride, fear and anxiety. Hence, thirst for money can be counted as one of the sufferings. It is difficult to earn wealth, painful to part with it, nor is there pleasure in protecting it, and human beings are never satisfied with any amount of it. Seeing this, the wise look upon wealth as productive only of pain, and neither aspire for it, nor do they grieve at its loss. However, we experience that the wealth is not an obstruction to dharma. On the other hand, It can be an aid to dharmic practices. The different treatises on polity have a concern about concrete administrative pattern to earn and spend money than abstract theorizing. In case of a ruler, attainment of wealth is verily necessary. The excessive greed is harbinger of ruin, and too little of wealth brings misery. Vatsayana says, but Artha should be always first practiced by the king, for the livelihood of men is to be ordained from it only. Arthasya rajnyaha tanmulatvat lokayatrayaha. The strength of a king is based on treasury and army. Army is based on treasury. Dharma is protected by the army and the people by dharma. Rajnyaha koshamulam, Rajnyaha koshabalam moolam, koshamulam punarbalam, tanmulam sarvadharmanam, dharma mulaha punah prajaha, says the Mahabharata. The king should produce wealth from his own as well as from other nations. O Kamteya, Dharma depends on treasury. It is treasury that strengthens the foundation of a nation. Therefore, the king should fill, guard and increase the treasury. This is the Dharma of the king, says Mahabharata. I quote the original Sanskrit verse. Swarashtrat, Pararashtracha, Kosham Sanjanayit Nupaha, Koshadhi Dharma Kamteya, Rajyam Moolam Cha Vardhate, Tasmat संजनयेत कोशम सत्कृत्य परिपालयेत परिपाल्य अनुगृह्णीयात् एष धर्म सनातनः. Tax should not be collected from Brahmins, as 1/6 portion of the righteous conduct of Brahmins goes to a king, says Vishnu Dharma Sutra. Brahmanebhyo karadanam na kuryat tehi rajno dharma karadaha. A practical view based on observation is mentioned in the Mahabharata. It speaks about compromises. It has been said, wealth cannot be earned neither by pure means nor by cruelty. The treasury has to be maintained by following the middle path. न कोशः शुद्ध भावेन न नृशंसेन जायते मध्यमं पदमास्थाय कोश संग्रहणं चरेत्. If wealth is not distributed, it will be wasted as the water stored in an unfired clay pot is wasted. It is therefore one's duty to preserve it. Katham na vidyeta na cha sraveta na cha prasichet iti rakshitavyam arakshamanam shatadha prakiryet dhruvam na nashosti kutasya loke. The acquisition of wealth by Sama, Dama, Danda and Veda has been prescribed. These and others are guidelines how the ruler should use the surplus in charity and in public works. The Mahabharata says wealth must be spent on public works such as highways, waterways, sources of drinking water, wells, ponds and lakes, temples and public gardens. For the acquisition of wealth, the significance of willpower is emphasized. It has been said, inner strength, the willpower alone is the source of all wealth. This alone is the truth, as the shade of trees is no more protection in autumn days. Similarly, weakness of the inner power has no place in the earning of wealth. Sattvam hi moolam arthasya vitatham yad atonyatha natu prasaktam bhavati dukshachayev hemani. Money should be collected from traders and merchants. For this purpose, the ways and means of earning should always be free from force and violence. He who nurtures a cow with care gets abundant milk every day. He won't get it if he cuts its udder. Similarly, those who can provide wealth should not be hurt. They should not be exploited. Beating, robbing and fraud are prohibited for earning wealth. If it should be followed, then one will understand that ruler is just the guardian and executor of the wealth. The essence of Rajadharma is that it is important to understand the logic of having and what it leads to unless disciplined. Precisely, wealth is needed for the welfare of an individual as well as that of a nation. Greed for wealth is to be discarded, and accumulation of wealth should be for the betterment of society. Now, we come to kama, that is pleasure. The desire for worldly gains and for physical happiness has its value in human life. Kama is desire in its pure form. In the Mahabharata and also in the Vatsyayana's Kama Sutra, the importance of kama and its significance in human life is discussed at length. It is believed that the teachings of Prajapati were divided in dharma, artha and kama. Prajapatihi hi prajaha srishtva tasam sthitiniबन्धनं त्रिवर्गस्य साधनं अध्यायानां शतसहस्रेण agre provacha. Manu inhered the dharma teachings, तस्य एकदैशिकं मनु स्वयंभू धर्माधिकारिकं पृथक्चकार. Bruhaspati inhered the Artha teachings, Bruhaspati Arthadhikarikam, and Nandi, the doorkeeper of Lord Shiva, instructed the art of love in 1000 chapters. Mahadevanucharasya Nandi Sahasrena Adhyayanam Pruthak Kama Sutram Provacha. Nandi's teachings were gathered up and threaded by Shvetaketu, the son of Uddalaka Aruni, into Kama Sutra of 500 chapters. Tadev tu Panchabhi Adhyaya Sataihi Uddaliki Shvetaketu Sankshikshepa. Babhravya of Panchala distilled the wisdom through a text, Babhravya Karika, which contained 150 chapters and was divided into 7 sections. The meditations of Babhravya were explained by Charayana, Suvarnanabha, Ghotakamukha, Gonardiya, Gonikaputra and Kuchumara. Babhravya's text could not be restored. It was exhaustive and was styled in archaic language. Vatsyayana composed Kama Sutra with a purpose to make the Babhravya Karika intelligible. Kama is a Sanskrit word derived from the root kam, which means to desire for. Kama connotes sensual desire, desire to seek anything, desire for pleasure, and it also means the willpower. In the form of willpower, Kama is the force behind all astounding achievements from science to spirituality in relation with the human race and civilizations. Its significance in human life is attested in painting, sculpture, and literature. In the sense of sensual desire, Kama is verily the origin of life. Kama is also the seed for cosmic creation. The Rigveda says that in the beginning there was Kama, that is desire, in its pure form, the root of creation. It has been said, in the beginning there was neither existent nor non-existent. Kama desire was the first seed of mind. Nasa dasin no sadasit tadanim kamas tadagre samavartata tadadhimanaso retah prathamam yadasit. The Brihadaranyaka Upanishad highlights the significance of desire in day-to-day life and its effect in designing the future birth of man. It says, the man is identified with desire alone. As is his desire, so is his resolution. And as is his resolution, so is his deed. And whatever deed he does, that he reaps. Kamamayam evaya ayam purushaha. स यथा कामो भवति तत्क्रतुर्भवति यत्क्रतुर्भवति तत्कर्म कुरुते यत्कर्म कुरुते तद अभिसंपद्यते. In worldly life, when intense desire is directed to a particular object, it starts functioning with full force to obtain it. This pursuit results into happiness, suffering or anger, depending upon the favorable or unfavorable outcome of the pursuit. That is why desire is to be conquered. Desire conquered, all other defects are conquered. Thus says the Monkey Gita, desire, anger, greed, confusion of perceptions, arrogance, sloth and attachments are the seven enemies of man. And with them, conquering desire, I will be happy like a king. According to Acharya, Kama is the delight of body, mind and soul in delicate sensation. It is awakening between the senses and the sense. It is the enjoyment of appropriate objects by the five senses of hearing, feeling, seeing, tasting and smelling, assisted by the mind together with the soul. The ingredient of this is a particular contact between the organ of sense and its object. The consciousness of pleasure which arises from that particular contact is called kama. श्रोत्रत्वक चक्षु जिह्वा घ्राणानाम् आत्मसंयुक्तेन मनसाधिष्ठितानां स्वेषु स्वेषु विषयेषु अनुकूल्यतः प्रवृत्तिः कामः. On darsenic lines, the Mahabharata also describes kama as the joy attained through the contact of sense organs with their objects. It says, kama, this wishful conception of the mind, is the joy that arises when the five senses, the mind and the heart are taken up with the objects of senses. That joy is one of the best fruits of man's actions. Bhima places kama over the other ends of life. He underlines its significance in the following verse. Without kama, that is intense desire, man has no wish for worldly gains. Without kama, man does not strive after the good, that is dharma. Without kama, man does not love. Therefore, kama stands above the other purusharthas. Traders, farmers, herdsmen, artists and artisans work as they are driven by kama. On kama is founded dharma and artha. The Bhagavad Gita mentions the senses, mind and intellect as the substratum of kama. Indriyani manobuddhi asya adhishthanam uchyate. Lord Krishna declares kama not in conflict with dharma as his manifestation. Dharma viruddho bhuteshu kamosvi bharatarshava. Existence of kama at the level of senses is its gross form. Its existence on the mental level sublimes it, whereas the intellect discriminates between good and evil types of kama. Kama in the form of Ichha Shakti, desire, is essentially inevitable for the progress of human society. The Apastamba Dharma Sutra says that all such pleasures which do not conflict with dharma should be enjoyed. In the Kama Sutra, it has been said, the man and woman who know Artha, Kama and Dharma, all the three, and acts with body, mind and soul, always, here and now, are happy through this world and in the next. Evam artham cha kamam cha dharmam cha upacharan naraha ihamutra cha nishalyam atyantam sukham ashnute. Kama Sutra says, Kama, Dharma, Artha. Know two of them, or even one, if you can't know all the three. But never practice any one at the other pair's expense. Some people practice Dharma and Artha, saying Kama is to be ignored because ascetics, whose way of life is sanctioned by the Vedas, have turned their backs on pleasure. Kama in the sense of fulfillment of aesthetic works cannot be fulfilled if abundance of wealth is lacking. Abundant wealth is the fertile soil for Kama. The contrasting stands on the value of Kama and its denial carry equal weightage. The tension in accepting Kama as a value of human life is an outcome of the tension between Pravritti Dharma and Nivritti Dharma. Its denial is due to its acclaimed obstructive power in the path of spirituality. Unless desires are controlled, the spiritual goal cannot be achieved. So, karma has to be governed by dharma. Unwarranted practices are censured. Rightly, it has been said, dharma is the root from which artha grows and kama flowers. This is why Gandharva marriage was approved by the Smritis to legitimate the sprout of love between lovers. The purport is that in spiritual life, kama in the sense of greed and sensual desire is to be adjured. The Gita Govinda by Jayadeva, a text which is from the 12th century, has given a divine dimension to earthly love of Radha who sought union with the divine, that is Lord Krishna. Now about moksha. The concept of moksha has been seminal to the Indian ideal of life. It has been said in the Mahabharata, for the one who wishes liberation from the human condition, moksha is the greatest good. Through your mental faculties, try to achieve that. Moksho va paramam shreya, eva rajan sukharthinam, praptirva buddhimasthaya, sopayam gurunandana. The nature and destiny of the individual self and moksha are interconnected concepts. The concept of moksha elaborates on human's relation with the ultimate reality. The individual life in the worldly state is incomplete, imperfect, and finite. It has a goal to achieve, a purpose to fulfill, and an end to realize. Moksha is that end, which is the summum bonum of life. The Yajnavalkya Smriti considers moksha as a higher goal than dharma and says that the realization of the self, which is the ultimate characteristic of moksha, carries more weightage than all the rituals of dharma. It proclaims, over and above such acts of sacrifice, traditional practices, self-control, non-violence, charity, and the study of the Veda, this verily is the highest dharma, namely the realization of the self, that is the moksha by means of yoga. Ijjachara damahimsa dana swadhyaya karmanam ayam tu paramo dharmo yad yogena atmadarshanam. Moksha is mentioned by different terms such as Nishreyasa, Apavarga, Mukti, Nirvana, and Kaivalya. It implies a complete freedom from bondage of the cycle of birth and death and absolute separation from all types of sufferings. It is centered upon the individual seeker. It is attained by knowing the roots of bondage and removing its cause. Owing to the different stances, the various schools of philosophy, have developed their own theories and devised different paths to attain the goal. The whole range of differing approaches provide freedom to an individual to adopt one or the other path according to his attitude. The Vedanta schools admonish the path of action, Karma Yoga, the path of knowledge, Jnana Yoga, and the path of devotion, Bhakti Yoga, and have preferred one over the others. The Vedanta schools maintain that the state of moksha is that of complete freedom from desires and passions and therefore implies performance of actions without motive or interest, nishkama karma. The Katha Upanishad says, when all the desires that the heart harbors return to the originating ground from which they come, the ignorance about one's real nature comes to an end, and that is the state of moksha. यदा सर्वे प्रमुच्यन्ते कामा ये अस्य वृद्धिस्थिताः अथमर्त्यो मृतो भवति अत्र ब्रह्म समुष्णुते. The Brihadaranyaka Upanishad mentions the types of desires that man has to abandon. It says, the knowers of Brahman live on alms as they have given up attachment to Putraishana, desire for son, Vittaishana, desire for wealth, and Lokaishana, desire for the heaven. Moksha is realizable. The ascetic spirit of discipline prescribed for the attainment of moksha makes the pilgrimage of human life meaningful. Indian philosophy, with its variety, holds different views on the concept of the real. Therefore, moksha has been conceived differently in different schools on the basis of their metaphysical stance. The Atmavadins, namely Sankhya Yoga, Nyaya Vaisheshika, Purva Mimamsa and Uttar Mimamsa, who regard the individual self as an indestructible eternal entity, and the Anatmavadins, who regard it as composite and subject to disintegration, hold different positions on moksha. The orthodox schools of Indian philosophy differentiate between the embodied empirical self with body, senses, and mind and the supreme self. The embodied self is subject to bondage, while the supreme self is ever free from all bondages and limitations. Freedom from bondages and limitations is precisely the state of moksha. Now, we take into consideration moksha according to Purva Mimamsa and Uttar Mimamsa. The early Mimamsa school treated attainment of heaven as the highest good. However, in course of time, the Mimamsakas accepted liberation from bondage to the flesh as the highest good, Nishreyas. Bondage is the fettering of the soul to the world through the body, including the senses, motor organs, and manas. Destruction of such bondage is moksha. They maintain that the performance of actions motivated by desire for enjoyment of objects causes bondage, which can be removed by disinterested actions. Moksha is the pure state of the self. In it, there is neither merit nor demerit for the soul. To understand that worldly pleasures are mingled with pain, to control passions, to perform obligatory actions, to desist from forbidden actions, and to desist from actions with motives for future enjoyments is the path for liberation. The person, free from all bonds of karma, is liberated by disinterested performance of obligatory duties and knowledge of the self. Then the karmas accumulated in the past are gradually worn out. Moksha is excluding all pain and pleasure. It is a disembodied state. Here, there is absolute cessation of suffering. The Vedanta school known as Uttara Mimamsa has many formulations, namely Kevaladvaita of Shankara, Vishishtadvaita of Ramanuja, Dvaita of Madhva, Dvaitadvaita of Nimbarka, and Shuddhadvaita of Vallabha. They agree that moksha is not a matter of attainment, but of realization of the true nature of the self. The central distinguishing feature of Kevaladvaita is that reality cannot be true. It cannot be two. It is only one without a second, pure, undifferentiated consciousness. Shankaracharya, in his conception of moksha, emphasizes that Brahman alone truly exists. Its essence is pure consciousness and bliss. It is absolutely bereft of all qualities. The self is Brahman. The knowledge of non-duality of the individual soul and Brahman dawns when the path of self-inquiry is successfully pursued. Owing to the ignorance of the self, erroneously associates itself with the body. As the ignorance is dispelled, one is liberated through knowledge. This experience of unity with the ultimate reality, that is Brahman, is possible while tenating a body. This is technically known as Jivan Mukti. The liberated soul does not identify itself with the body, even though due to past karmas the body continues till Videha Mukti. After the person sheds the body, he is called as one who has attained Videha Mukti, that is liberation from the body. It is an experience of the undifferentiated, pure consciousness and bliss. According to Ramanuja and other thinkers who belong to the schools of Vaishnavism, the ultimate reality has multiple differentiations within it, like an organism having multiple organs. The individual self is the part of one ultimate reality which is eternal, immortal conscious being, and it retains its distinct identity in the state of moksha. In moksha, the individual soul is regarded as being similar to Brahman in the sense that it has infinite consciousness and bliss. Except Madhva, the other theistic philosophers do not accept Jivan Mukti. They maintain that there are four dimensions of moksha: entering the abode of God, Salokata; proximity with God, Samipata; being similar to God, Sarupata; and finally, entering the very being of God without losing one's distinct identity and individuality, that is Sayujjata. Here the souls enjoy the blissful company of God. In moksha, the self becomes similar to God, but the nature of similarity and mode of existence in moksha have different connotations to the different theistic schools. Now, what is moksha according to Sankhya and Yoga? According to the Sankhya school, the cause of suffering is ignorance, that is, the non discrimination between the self and the non self. The knowledge of the distinction between the two, Viveka Jnana, results in liberation. The self is pure consciousness. In the worldly state, it falsely identifies itself with matter and material objects, though it is not body and the senses, the mind and the intellect. This is bondage resulting in an embodied state according to the threefold suffering. Freedom from this suffering due to discriminative discernment is moksha. There is no positive pleasure in moksha, as pleasure is the product of sattva guna. There is uninterrupted peace for the self, which has regained its nature as pure consciousness. It is impossible in the worldly state, even when the self is still embodied. Moksha is realization. In yoga, bondage is on account of functioning of the inner sense organ, that is the mind. When the function of mind is controlled, it merges into its cause, hence the absolute consciousness remains in its pure form, devoid of the reflections of mind stuff. This is Kaivalya. In Patanjali's words, Purushartha Shunyanam Gunanam Pratiprasavaha Kaivalyam Swarupa Pratishtava Chiti Shaktiriti. According to the Nyaya system, the self, being conditioned by its past karma, undergoes the tract of transmigration until it is liberated. It has two states of existence, embodied and disembodied. The former state is that of bondage, and the latter, of course, is that of moksha. Threefold suffering is due to the acquisition of consciousness on account of the conjunction of the self with the body, senses, and mind. Apavarga is the state of negation, complete and absolute, of all pain and suffering. In this state, the self is released from the shackles of the body and the senses. Consequently, it no more experiences pain and pleasure. It is not subject to any experience or consciousness. It exists as a pure substance. It is a supreme condition of the self. The liberation is the result of the knowledge of the 16 categories, which culminates in self-realization, that is moksha. True knowledge dispels ignorance. Consequently, desire, aversion, and error disappear. The destruction of these defects lead to the end of action. Once action is no more, cessation of the birth and sorrow takes place. The Apavarga is the absolute cessation of suffering, and it is not a positive state of happiness, as no happiness is without the admixture of pain. It is a state of perfect tranquility. As regards the Vaisheshika view on moksha, the Vaisheshikas maintain that the soul goes through samsara according to his past karma. Good conduct and knowledge of categories lead to liberation, for which special merit is a prerequisite. However, merit and demerit cause rebirth. Therefore, in the final release, there is total absence of both. It is a state of absolute cessation of pain. Since happiness does not exist without pain, it is not present in the state of liberation. The Charvakas or Lokayatas are silent on moksha. According to the Jainas, moksha is attained when the ties of karma are completely snapped. The Jaina tradition believes that Narayana is incarnated in the form of Rishabhadeva to liberate people from bondage. It has been said, in this age of Kali, people are overwhelmed by the modes of passion and ignorance. Lord Rishabhadeva incarnated himself to deliver them from samsara and to liberate them. Ayam avtaro rajasa upaplata अयम अवतारो रजसा उपप्लुतः Kaivalya upashikshanartha. The Buddhists believed in Nirvana as the summum bonum of life. The primitive Buddhist sutras define Nirvana as the extinction of greed, anger, and ignorance. It is infinite, immeasurable, and inexpressible. It is absence of kleshas and skandhas. According to the Mahayana, those who attain Nirvana neither abide in the samsara nor in ultimate quiescence. The bird's eye view of Purusharthas generates the following insights. Dharma is not static. It changes according to the changing time. That is why we have different forms of Dharma in the Satya, Treta, Dvapara and Kali ages. Tapas, austerities constitute the highest Dharma in the Satya Yuga. In the Treta Yuga, the sacred knowledge. In Dvapara Yuga, performance of sacrifice. And in Kali Yuga, charity is the highest Dharma. Shlagham krute tapa proktam, Tretayam yajna karma cha, Dvapare yajna dane cha, Danameva kalau yuge, says Brahma Purana. In this context, Bhudan, giving of land in charity, the movement initiated by Vinoba Bhave, Shramadana, physical labor as a service to society, and Sampatti Dana, gift of wealth can be cited as change in the concept of dharma in changing times. We should innovate new avenues to employ dharma for the welfare of man. As for Kama, the Kama Sutra says that only dharma and artha are the main Purusharthas, and that is why one should not be submissive to desires. However, as the human body is sustained by food, dharma and artha are also sustained by kama, that is desire. Sharira sthiti hetutvat ahar sadharmano hi kamaha phalabhutascha dharmarthayoh, says the Kama Sutra. Kama has an important role for the continuation of the human race. One should not ignore kama on account of its defects. It is not that one does not cook food for the fear of the beggars, and it is not likely that barley seeds are not sown out of the fear of deer. बोद्धव्यम तु दोषेषु इव नहि भिक्षुकाः सन्ति इति स्थाल्याः न अधिश्रियन्ते नहि मृगाः सन्ति इति यवाः नोप्यन्ते इति वात्सायनः. The Mahabharata strikes a balance in the pursuit of all the three goals by saying that one should enjoy all the three, dharma, artha and kama, together. One who enjoys only one of them is the lowliest. He who enjoys two of them is the middle, while he who enjoys all the three in a balanced way is the best. The Mahabharata also says, thus, one should regard virtue, wealth and pleasure one after another. One should not devote oneself to virtue alone, nor regard wealth as the highest object of one's wishes, nor pleasure, but should ever pursue all. Kautilya in the Arthashastra says, the three pursuits of life, dharma, artha and kama, are mutually related and hence should be resorted with equal importance. Samam va trivargam अन्योनानुबंधम एको hi अत्यासेवितो धर्मार्थ कामानाम आत्मानम इतरौ च पीडयति. What is the relevance of Purusharthas in the present times? Why should one practice Purusharthas in this era of science and technology? Let us ponder over this issue. Life has to be meaningful. It is not just a process of birth and death. More than these two ends, what is important is the span of life between these two poles. If it has this life between these two poles, if it has a frame that suits to one's likings, attitude, etc. It has to be based on certain do's and don'ts, which are designed by the term dharma. They are designated by the dharma. If a person is not steady in his concept of do's and don'ts, his personality will be a fragmented personality without any consistency in thoughts, actions, and human relations. Such a person, by knowing the essence of Dharma, will, I hope, know his wholeness and will receive the strength to establish agreeable relationship with others and will thereby overcome the adverse conditions. Dharma is the bridge for relationship to the highest value. There is nothing wrong if people are after wealth and material prosperity. These two things will bring joy in their life. The only concern is that the excessive greed makes man unhappy as there is no end of the pursuit. He is bereft of the small but not insignificant joys if he does not follow them. The Kathopanishad tells us that all the pleasures lure man, and he who chases them one after the other harms his body and mind, and hence one should control the desire. In the context of karma, the sensual desire, one should follow the ethical norms and be upright to his family. Dharmartha avirodhena kamam seveta na nisukham syat, says the Kautilya Arthashastra. Moksha is freedom from suffering. In the context of modern times, it can be interpreted as freedom from jealousy and hatred, avarice and malice, the instinct of possessing that which belongs to others, and violence on account of competition in the struggle of life. This is what I feel. It is being free from the inferior man in oneself. The death of that inferior man in him is the unveiling of the divine within him that forever will protect him for the shadow of adharma. Dear friends, having said all this, all of us now should arrive at the conclusion that Purusharthas are not meant for an intellectual understanding. We should make effort to become capable of action in the framework provided by them. Even an infinitesimal success will ignite 1,000 lamps in our life. Thank you very much. And thanks especially to Dr. Narendra Joshi for having invited me to deliver a speech. Thank you once again.
Thank you so much, Dr. Kala Madam. It was wonderful to know from you and the way you deciphered this very important topic for all of us. Thank you once again for your joining this particular series, Swatantra Bharat 75, The Genius of India as a Key to the Crisis of Humanity. Thank you once again, and we look forward to your association in future. Thank you.